Can you believe this is the first Seiko I've ever bought? What do you guys think? Good or bad? Hello everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Warlock channel. I hope you are all safe and well, and today we are going to be looking at the first Seiko that I've ever bought. It is the Seiko SARY, the Seiko SARY, to be specific, 057. Now, this watch was a Japanese domestic market only watch. However, I believe it was discontinued a number of years ago. You can still find an example of these readily available on eBay. I would say that you could probably find this watch from between 200 to 300, maybe even £400. And if you can find it at that amount, I think you're in for a pretty good watch. Now, as far as I can see online, you can find this watch in two colorways mainly, and there is potentially like a two-tone blackface version as well. So you've got a blackface version, which is the one that I bought, and you've also got a cream dial version, which is the SARY 055. As I said before, you can find these ones regularly on eBay, although they may not be in your own country, but they're still showing at pretty decent prices. This watch features all of the things that Seiko used to offer at this price point before they started tightening the screw and upping some of the specifications and having that on more expensive watches. So you've got the applied indices, you've actually got a applied logo as well with printed automatic at the bottom. You've got thicker baton type indices at 6, 9 and 12 o'clock, and then you've got a day date wheel 3 o'clock. And what I really like about the day date wheel on this one is that it's actually color matched to the dial. Some say that the date wheel actually takes away from the symmetry of the watch. I tend to disagree with that. I mean, yes, it does take away from the symmetry of the watch. You can't, get over that. However, what I think is that, first of all, a day-date complication is incredibly useful. But the fact that it's color matched, I think, takes this watch to a new level. And I think it doesn't take away too much, especially with the beveled edge around the window. There's a minute train around the outside of the dial. It's extremely fine, but it gives good proportions of the seconds in detail. It's hard to see straight on, however it is still very visible otherwise, and I think it adds extra to the dial to give it a little bit more complexity, so it's not as plain Jane as you would think from first glance. Finally, on the dial itself, you've got two bits of writing on the main part. You've got a little bit of writing on the minute track as well, which is just made in Japan, and the 4R36 movement. But on the very top, you've got an applied Seiko logo that looks very nice, and then underneath printed you have automatic, and it's in the same sort of handwriting type script that you get on the SARB 033 or some of the other pressage models that you get nowadays. The lack of lume on the dial also shows that this watch isn't as utilitarian as some of the other watches in the lineup. This is definitely more of a dressier style of watch, although it is still a sports watch with 100 meters of water resistance. So moving on to the case itself, and I think this case is pretty good, especially for the price that you're paying. I think Seiko have put a lot of effort into this when you compare it to some of the older versions and models that they have, especially the new ones at this price point as well. So you've got a sort of polished bezel on the outside, you've got some brushing and some polishing around the case itself. At 3 o'clock you've got a crown. The crown is slightly recessed, adding to that 100 meters of water resistance. But you've also got a sign crown as well. Sign crown on a Seiko. Who'd have thought it, eh? Who'd have thought it? Going on to the bracelet of this watch, it's 22mm. I could have probably done with a 20mm. However, I think that it still looks in proportion. It doesn't look out of place at all. You do have Seiko's pin and collar system on the bracelet. That's something to keep in mind. For me, this wasn't actually too difficult to adjust. However, I know that some people do have problems with it. The only thing that I've changed on this watch is the clasp. So the clasp was a normal press clasp. It wasn't great, but it wasn't too bad. I've just upgraded to a milled clasp because I had one lying around the house, and that was really the only amendment that I've made to this watch since. I think the bracelet itself is quite comfortable. It sits quite nicely on wrist. From what I've seen of other YouTube reviewers online, this bracelet is probably better than the SARB 033. So moving on to the movement of the watch, and very typically Seiko, it is the ubiquitous 4R36, or as some may call it, the NH36 when it's not in a Seiko. This one is a day-date complication with a colour match date wheel. It does hacking, hand winding, all the basics that you would expect from Seiko. These movements are reliable and they are robust, and they tend to last for a pretty long time. What I do like about this watch is that you've got the Hardlex open exhibition back where you can see the movement. It's not the prettiest of movements, but I do still appreciate that. One thing that they've done on this watch, which they do now with a lot of their Pressage models, is they've put that sort of gold plated rotor over the top as well, which again adds an extra sort of dressy aspect to it. So in preparation for this review, I've had a look at a couple of other reviews, whether they're written or on YouTube, and quite a few people have sort of hailed this one and the SARB 033 as being a Baby Grand Seiko because of how dressy it is and because of how it looks on the wrist. Now, I've never had a Grand Seiko myself. I can't claim that it exactly, you know, sort of looks like it or feels like it, but what I can say is on the wrist it does feel definitely more expensive and a better made watch than you actually pay for it. I think it's incredible value for money, but I do see some similarities to some of the Grand Seiko models as well. Yes, it's not an exact sort of one-for-one copy, but I do see some elements of that design sort of culture coming in. So, you know, in my opinion, yeah, you could say that. You could say that it has some crossover with a Grand Seiko. Whether you could call it a Baby Grand Seiko or not, I think I'll leave that to you. So final thoughts on this watch. Well, I think it's a good watch. It's well built, and it harks back to a time when Seiko were offering more value for money. The great news with this watch is that you can still find examples readily available online for under £400. So have a look around. You might need to do some digging on eBay. You might have to buy it from another country and have it shipped over to wherever you are. But I think that if you can pick this one up, it's definitely worth it. However, the caveat with that is that I think you need to have a 7-inch wrist or larger, because although it is a 40mm watch and it has a really nicely curved lug to lug, if you have a smaller wrist, I think the dials will look a little big on you. I think it looks perfect on me. I've got a 7.25-inch wrist. It might be 7.5-inch wrist now. I've been having a lot of cake recently, but if you can wear it like that and it feels good on the wrist, why not? So the Seiko SARY range, have you bought one? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. Did you buy this one, or did you opt for the SARB 033, or are you still holding out for the perfect Seiko everyday watch? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. We are, as I'm talking, we are just over 2,000 subscribers. Hopefully we'll be getting some more coming in, and I've got some great videos lined up. But guys, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in a future video.